London-listed Earthport, a cloud-based cross-border payment system for banks and other organisations, has reported an update for investors that shows another strong quarterly revenue increase, this time by a margin of 78%. Hank Uberoi is Chief Executive. He joins us now. Good to talk to you. Tell us what's going on at the business.
So I think one thing that's really important to think about when you think about Earthport is what do we do? Because to put the numbers in context, you have to understand a little bit about the opportunity. Earthport is unusual in that when you talk about payments, everybody immediately focuses on the consumer. The thing to understand is that the B2B, the business-to-business payments market, is about 100 times bigger than the consumer market on a cross-border basis. It's about $28 trillion. And we basically focus on that market in addition to the consumer market. With a single connection into us, we can deposit money into any bank account in the world in 64 countries. And that is probably the single largest opportunity in the world of payments. So we started this process of building out this capability with the view that we could solve this problem for some segment of the market. Currently, cross-border payments take place through banks using correspondent banking, the wire system, which is 40 years old. It's very antiquated. It takes a long time. It's very expensive. We've eliminated all of those inefficiencies. And the proof now is in the fact that some of the largest and most sophisticated players in the market, like Bank of America, Santander, HSBC, Standard Chartered, they're all using us. They're clients of ours. Even Western Union is a client of ours. And so all of these companies are using us because while our solution is incredibly disruptive, it's not competitive. We offer it in a partnership model. We're actually solving a problem for an entire industry. And so when the challenge in this market obviously is when you introduce a new market and you're the first player to do it, it takes a while for people to accept it. It takes a while for people to then ramp up on it. And that's what we are now starting to see. We're starting to see the beginning of that growth curve.
Your problem's going to be then, isn't it, establishing this new model, and then the larger payment companies, PayPal, for example, obviously presumably one of the biggest in the world, is then going to start stealing market share from you. Is that the threat?
Well, actually, that is the least of our threats, because fundamentally, if you think about it, if somebody could easily do it, they'd be doing it. Right. HSBC is obviously, and Standard Chartered and Bank of America are large. The problem with cross-border payments is that it is complex, it is highly regulated, and it is basically multiple jurisdictions. A typical bank has platforms in 30 countries, they have hundreds of departments, and to make any changes in that infrastructure is very difficult. What we have is a new platform. It is deep and narrow in a highly complex and regulated field. We already in 64 countries, which gives us the largest ACH network in the world, bigger than any bank out there. We can process in 120 currencies. So if somebody started today, I mean, you're looking at a very long period of time if they ever get there.
Okay, I spoke a little bit about this quarterly update, 78% rise in revenue. Give us some context about where the company's come from, where it's going, and the markets that it's going to get into.
Yeah, so I think that is really the key to the story. Is while the 78% is a great growth statistic, the reality is it's on a base which is a minuscule fraction of what the opportunity is. To give you a sense for it, we had an investor day last year in London where we invited our investors, our clients, to come in and talk to our investors, because when you have a new model and you're trying to explain it, and the numbers are very large, people's eyes glaze over. Yeah. So we said, how about you hear it from the people who are actually using it? So the global head of payments from Bank of America came and talked to investors, and he said, this company is going to change correspondent banking worldwide. I know it. I move $500 billion a day, right? So that's the size of the market. If you look at any one of these banks, they move we are processing a relatively small portion of the volume for each of these banks because they're all basically go in, they try it out, and now they're starting to ramp up. Many of our clients are now out there bidding on businesses which they never would have been, particularly in the e-commerce space, where they never would have been able to acquire or bid on it if it wasn't for our solution. One of our clients has responded to 57 RFPs, and we're embedded in every one of them.
Right.
And so that's the size of the market just in North America and Europe where we're selling, but we're now starting to expand globally too. Okay,
let's take a look at a bit about the potential here. I think you're a £200 million company at the moment. What are you aiming for here? You talk about the big potential. What do you think Earthport is capable of?
So I think the size, the one thing that is not a limiting factor in the growth of the Earthport story is the size of the market. Like I said, $28 trillion moves around in a year. Any fraction of that, you don't have to really do too much math, is quite significant. Yeah. If we had 5 or 7% of the addressable market, which is not the entire $28 trillion. It's the low value cross-border payments. We would be the largest payments company in the world.
Okay, so you're doing this turnover. What do you say to investors about getting in to the stock? Let's have a look at the stock price. I mean, we've got here a chart that goes back to 2011. This year, it's been pretty much flat. We're currently at 41 pence. What do you say to the investor about where you're going? What are you doing? Profits? Or you continue to reinvest?
So I think when we gave our update last year, we said we expected to hit cash flow break even on a run rate basis some point during the course of this half that we just passed. And we actually achieved that target earlier than we expected. But then we looked at the size of the opportunity and the incoming. So what the dynamics of the market has happened is it's shifted from us going after clients to clients coming after us, because now our product is proven. Sophisticated players are using it. People are starting to feel competitive pressure if they don't have it. So we're seeing it. And we said this is a time for us to actually invest and capture the size of the opportunity, the real opportunity that's out there. In addition to that, we're looking at it and saying this is one of the largest payments opportunities out there. We are the only players doing it. We probably got several years ahead of us of a clear runway where we can establish our presence, we can establish our capability, our market share, and particularly from a geographic perspective. I mean, if you look at the cross-border payments, obviously Europe and North America are very, very big markets. But if you look at Asia, it is projected to be 40% of all cross-border payments by 2020, according to an analysis by one of the consulting companies. And so we want to have a presence out there. So we opened up an office in Asia. We're expanding in the Middle East to cover Africa. We're expanding into Latin America. And so we're making these investments because we are now confident about the core capability, the value proposition, the acceptance in the marketplace, and now we're basically ramping up to do it. From an investor standpoint, I'd say this is a story for a very large opportunity over a medium period of time. There is zero ability for us internally to predict volume ramp-ups in the very short terms.
Okay, risks to this model, to this rollout?
I think most of the core risks are behind us now. The risks would have been that this is a small company trying to operate in a highly complex and a highly regulated field, selling to banks. Banks hate working with small companies.
That's the point, is it? The fact that it's a highly regulated market. Yeah. Who regulates you?
We are regulated by the FCA as a payments institution. And that's another area where the fact that our proposition has really, really arrived is coming out in spades. We are being invited for discussions with regulators. The Bank of International Settlements has this committee called Committee for Payments and Market Infrastructure. The members are 28 central banks and regulators. They had their annual meeting a few weeks ago, and we were invited not only to attend, but to actually participate on a panel to talk about innovation and disruption in cross-border payments. My understanding is we were the only company out there in the entire world which is not part of a regulator or a market infrastructure. And at the end of it, they were very interested because they've heard from many people that cross-border payments are broken. But the challenge is when you're talking about 200 countries and 180 regulators, it's very hard to change anything. Yeah. And what they realized is different about us is we've got a solution, it's live, it works under the existing regulatory framework, and it runs on the existing rails. The whole world doesn't have to go change in order to adopt our model.
Okay, what's for the next half? Just briefly summarize where you're going. And
I think we are now in the execution mode. We are so pleased with the level of traction we have. Now our entire focus is on how do we maximize the overall size of the opportunity. So we're actually not even thinking about the next half or the next year. We're saying, what do we have to do today so that 2, 3, 4 years from now, this is a really, really large and successful company. And so we are actually looking at our core businesses. We are limited in terms of the number of things we can do in parallel, and we're trying to evaluate whether everything that we're doing is part of our long-term core strategy. Can we move resources around? And when we do our full earnings update, probably in early October, we will sort of share our entire strategy with the market.
Okay, well look, in the interim, it's been a pleasure, Hank. Thanks indeed for coming in to explain it all to us. We look forward to hearing more.
We look forward to it. Very nice to meet you.
That's the Chief Executive of Earthport, Hank Uberoi.